I am Speaker Pro Tem Brian Patrick Kennedy from the state of Rhode Island. I'm also the NCSL Foundation President and President Emeritus. Want to welcome you here this morning. You might ask, what's a guy from Rhode Island doing here talking about Kratom? Rhode Island is one of 6 states where Kratom is currently banned. And that was a decision that was made by our health department back around 2016. The reason I'm actually here is because we introduced a piece of legislation that has recently been signed by the governor, which creates sensible approach to how to regulate Kratom in the Kratom industry. We work very closely with our Department of Health, our Division of Taxation, because we did not have any mechanism in state law to figure out how to tax and create revenue from this, how to register products. We worked with our behavioral health folks because there were individuals who were making statements that, oh, this is not something that would be utilized by patients in the state of Rhode Island. But ultimately we got it through. And so April 1st of next year is not just April Fool's Day, but it's actually the first day that you can buy Kratom in the state of Rhode Island. So we're excited about this opportunity. I had an opportunity also recently to moderate a panel. And so that particular panel dealt with the product known as 7-OH. Very different from Kratom. It may be a derivative of Kratom, but when you hear about 7-OH, or if you're a legislator and you're approached about 7-OH in your particular state, recognize that most of 7-OH products are not from pure natural Kratom. That is a derivative, that is a pseudo-synthetic product. So I wanted to bring this information forth to you today before Mac begins the presentation, because I think these are exciting times. I think there is now 18 states that have now passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, and we want to see additional states do so, because we think this is going to be something that is good, natural, and something that is going to help a lot of people in your states, particularly if your state has had issues with opioid abuse. This is one of the perfect solutions to help and to step down from opioids in, that we have available to us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Mac Haddow. Mac.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you for this Learning Hub. We are recording it. We'll distribute it. So if you have colleagues in your home states that want to learn more about Kratom, we welcome that opportunity. People ask me all the time when we talk about Kratom, what is Kratom? Kratom is a tree grown principally in Southeast Asia with some growth in the United States now. Requires a tropical environment, lots of water. But Kratom's been used for centuries in Southeast Asia of farmers that will pick the leaves, hot days, gets them through the day with the energy boost, increased focus, helps them with pain relief. And we find that's very popular in the United States. That's what a Kratom tree looks like. The leaves on the right-hand side of this slide are leaves that were produced by Kratom trees in the state of Hawaii. They are just as potent in terms of the alkaloid content as those that are grown in Southeast Asia. So it offers an exciting economic opportunity to serve the Kratom consumer population in the United States. Kratom consumers, who are they? Dr. Oliver Grunman, the University of Florida, has done a number of surveys about Kratom consumers, and it breaks down roughly of the more than 20 million Kratom consumers in the United States. The average profile is they're married or partnered, 30 to 50 years old, employed with health insurance, income between $35,000 and $75,000 a year. They consult with their doctor about the use of Kratom. I'm one of those that's done that. They are educated with some college or graduate level degree, and some use it as an alternative for pain management option to prescription drugs. Johns Hopkins University did a study of Kratom consumers that were using kratom to wean off of opioids. And they found that 87% reported that kratom helped those people get off of opioids, wean off of them. It reduced their withdrawal symptoms and led them to being able to use kratom. About 35% replaced the opioid with kratom. It is why the National Institutes on Drug Abuse today says that kratom is a potentially very helpful harm reduction tool in this battle against opioid epidemic. Dr. Jack Henningfield from Johns Hopkins University has testified in many of the states where 18, as Brian mentioned, have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Dr. Henningfield points out that based on the research that's been done, that kratom is not a narcotic like opioid. That is important for people to understand. It has pain relief and therefore opioid-like characteristics, but it is not an opioid chemically or by law. And it provides benefits that are increased alertness, reduced pain, and aid in relieving withdrawal and suppression of opioid cravings. And this research has shown in animal models that you can consume 100 times more than any human could consume in a day, and you will be safe in terms of using these kratom products. And it's because of the way kratom interacts with what are called the mu-opioid receptors in your body. They are called partial agonists, meaning it doesn't go to that renewal system, the euphoric high. Kratom doesn't provide that to you, and it does not, importantly, go to your respiratory suppression system, which is the classic trait of an opioid. 18 states have passed it. Those are the states that have done it. We are going to go back and work with some of those states as we look to other states to pass it to make some corrections that are needed, and I want to talk about that in just a second. The FDA and the Department of Health and Human Services last week announced that they were going to recommend to the Drug Enforcement Administration scheduling of 7-hydroxymitragynine, which is a metabolite of the kratom plant. What that means is that it does not occur naturally in the kratom plant. But when they pull the leaves off of the trees and dry them over in Indonesia, because you can't ship leaves to the United States, you have to do it in powder form. So they dry the leaves, they crumble them, and then they put them into powder so that they can safely ship them without any of the mold and fungus that comes with the leaves and the moisture in the leaves, and they're able to protect the quality of that kratom raw material. 7-hydroxymitragynine is created in the oxidation process of drying the leaves. It occurs in very minimal amounts, trace amounts. And when it arrives in the United States, it's tested carefully for that, in addition to whether there's any E. coli, salmonella, or that kind of thing. But the recommendation for 7-hydroxymitragynine is because there are unscrupulous vendors here in the United States that are exploiting the kratom marketplace. What they have found is if they just tweak it a little bit, if they isolate 7-OH and then they increase its potency, they do that, by the way, by simply using chemicals that you use to shock your pool at home. That's how powerful that solvent is in order to extract 7-OH. 7-OH is a full agonist on the mu-opioid receptors in the brain. 7-OH goes to your euphoric high, and 7-OH goes to the respiratory system, and that is why in an unprecedented press conference with the FDA commissioner and the Secretary of HHS, you don't see that when there's a normal scheduling that's recommended for substances in the United States. This was something that Secretary Kennedy and Commissioner McCary believed was essential to protect the American people, and we fully concur with that. Commissioner McCary pointed out that 7-OH has all of the characteristics that I've just described to you, and the reason why it is critical for there to be action taken at the federal level in order to ban this product is because it's hurting people. One of the things about synthetic 7-OH is that it's very unstable. That means that it washes out of your bloodstream very quickly. When you're living, and 7-OH has contributed to deaths because of the powerful impact it has, but when you're alive, it washes out and you suddenly feel this craving that you need more, because that's what happens in the sector of the brain that has this euphoric high. And you have to have another dose of 7-OH. And you take that, and then you have to have it more quickly, and you find yourself fully addicted to 7-OH within about a week or two. And that's a dangerous pattern for people to be on. But if you walk into a store and say, I'm looking for Kratom, the clerk is likely to tell you, well, you should try this new product. It's called 7-OH. It's Kratom. It's not. And that's what the distinction that Commissioner McCary has made repeatedly, both in this press conference and in interviews afterwards, that they are not looking at natural Kratom. That's not the focus of the FDA. It was before, not today. And 7-OH is the culprit that they're looking at because it is harming people. People are addicted to it and they're dying from it. And that's the problem. I want you to listen to this. This is what you confront in your state legislatures. This is on the floor of the Louisiana House, where you have, and I don't criticize Representative Vidillo because she believes what you're about to hear, but the question was asked by the representative, what's the difference between synthetic 7-OH and pure Kratom? And here's the answer.
What is the difference, or is there a difference between the leaf, the tea, and the synthetic version?
There is no synthetic version, Rep. Jordan, and thank you for the question. You might see an amendment that talks about synthetic Kratom. It's an insult to all of us. When I saw an amendment like that, another member was going to bring it, and I said, tell the lobbyist who gave you that, I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. Because in effect, what we would be banning is a product that doesn't exist. The reality.
Confession purposes, I'm the lobbyist that told them that there was a synthetic version. And it's true there is. This representative was misled. She believed that there was no such thing as a synthetic because the driver behind their initiative was to ban Kratom. And if you listen to Commissioner McCary, if you listen to the scientist, if you listen to Secretary Kennedy, and if you listen to the DEA, who's now taken this under recommendation, there is a distinct difference between Kratom, the natural plant, and the synthetic 7-OH. And 7-OH is a synthetic product. And the good representative was misled by people who told her, oh, there's no difference. And some of those people that misled her, by the way, are in this thriving industry, the 7-OH people that are selling these products. They have captured the Kratom marketplace. They are imposters, and they are creating a safety signal that's harming your constituents, and it needs to be stopped, which is why we wanted to talk today. This is the kind of product that's being sold as the 7-OH products. This is called Oblivion. What does that tell you? What does it tell to a kid that walks into a store and he's walking down the row and he sees Oblivion? If I'm a drug seeker, I'm looking for the high, that's my product, right? That's the kind of marketing that's going on right now. This is called generic RX. Now, this appeals not to children, it appeals to the person like me that's walking down the aisle and says, I've got arthritis pain and I need to improve that. I'm going to go to generic RX. That tells me this is a drug product. It is not. Well, it is a drug, but it is not an approved drug. And that name obviously is deceiving consumers as they go down the aisle. And notice that it's 30 milligrams that they're advertising here. I think if I go back, I can't remember what, I think here it's 20 milligrams on that one. Smurfs 7-OH. What does that tell you? If you're a kid and you're walking down the aisle, there's no restriction on you buying it. Smurfs, pretty interesting. And this, of course, is 4 tablets, 100 milligrams, and you have to split the tablet in order to get their recommended serving size. Tell me whether that really happens in real life. Does not. Smurfs also has another version, 900 milligrams. In the state of Massachusetts, one of the largest 7-OH dealers in the country testified before the legislature here just after I did, and he said 7-OH is so safe you can eat 2 pounds of it in one sitting and you'll still be alive at the end. Now, first, I don't think that's the standard for you consuming a product, that you'll be alive at the end of the consumption period, right? But he said it, and after the hearing, one of the legislators came up to me and said, why don't we hook him up to all of the machines to trace his vital signs, and we'll know the exact minute when he dies, because it would kill you if you ate 2 pounds of this. It is absurd, but that's the way they're marketing it. That's why they believe it, and it's simply wrong, and it is an imposter on the marketplace. But you can get Smurfs at 900 milligrams. The equivalent dose of 7-OH in its natural occurring form in trace amounts from the leaves in Southeast Asia, not greater than 2% of the overall alkaloid fraction of the plant, is 1 milligram or less. They're marketing 900 milligrams. It's totally crazy. Now, this is one of the great products that captured the marketplace. That's a 7-OH product. What does it look like to you? It's an ice cream cone. It's a confection. It is a candy. It is something that appeals to children. That's the market they went after. That's the kind of unscrupulous vendors that are occupying this marketplace now that simply have to be shut down. This one was highlighted by Commissioner McCary as one of the examples of the egregious marketing that goes on in the United States for these dangerous products today. Then there's 7-OH pseudo. Now this is an interesting product. 7-hydroxymetrogenine, as I mentioned to you, is a byproduct of the drying process in the kratom plants. The next step in the chemical formulation of products is called pseudodoxil. It is totally chemical. And now they're advertising as the next stage of products. Don't just buy 7-OH, you can buy pseudodoxil. When the DEA assistant administrator and I talked about this, he said the FDA asked the DEA to consider pseudodoxil. He said, but there's not enough data out there for us to identify what the true harms yet are of pseudodoxil, but it clearly is a synthetic. It clearly is dangerous, and that's going to be one of the challenges unless we simply say we ban all of these synthetics that are derivative of any of the kratom leaf products, and we make them justify, them being the manufacturers, coming onto the marketplace as is required by federal law, having adequate safety to prove that they are able to be sold to consumers. This is 7-hydroxypseudodoxil called Kama, and they 200 milligrams, and they flavor it with cherry, and they're just trying to appeal, obviously, to consumers to work through this. Vince Sanders, this is a text message after the actual press conference, the announcement made by HHS and the FDA that they were going to recommend scheduling. Vince Sanders is one of the largest 7-OH marketers in the country. He was responding to a text message from one of his distributors saying, should we continue to sell this product? And he says, and this is his quote, 100% no reason to take it off the shelf. Watch sales soar after this. You couldn't buy this kind of advertising. If you want advertising for your product to be that HHS and FDA are recommending the scheduling as a Schedule I substance, that's not the right kind of product to be on the market. And yet they want to capitalize on it in order to flood the marketplace with these kinds of products, hook people, and get them addicted all along the way. The path to kratom consumer protection. The laws that we recommend in the states are simple in the sense that we require, the state law would require, that a kratom manufacturer has to justify their registration in your state by certifying with an independent lab that they are meeting GMP, good manufacturing practices, that the product formulation meets the statutory requirements. They have to certify that with an independent lab, and they have to document that they, in fact, have this safety data that's available. We limit the product formulations to the alkaloid content of the product, or the plant in this case, to no greater than 2% of the overall fraction of the plant. We want to add to that, now that we understand the science better since the first law was passed in 2019, to say no greater than 1 milligram per serving. That will eliminate the synthetic market, because naturally occurring kratom can deliver up to that 1 milligram and it's not going to be harmful to you. But when you get into 30 milligrams and 200 milligrams and 900 milligrams, it is a significant safety hazard, and the states have to fill the breach until the federal government can properly schedule these products, and that's what we recommend. We say that there should be no synthetic products. The manufacturing process of these natural plant materials shouldn't be allowed when they can synthesize it where they're unrecognizable. You cannot tell that they're kratom. The problem, as I mentioned earlier with 7-OH, is it is so unstable that not only do you have the recurring need to take it again and you get addicted to it, but when a person dies because of respiratory suppression that is the hallmark of an opioid, which Commissioner McCary has identified this as an opioid, when they test the blood, it is washed out of the bloodstream. So the coroner or the medical examiner only sees that low level of kratom raw material, mitragynine, in the bloodstream, and they say it's a kratom death. And now the FDA has finally recognized that that's the problem, that it's being mislabeled along the way. No synthetics should be allowed in any state where you're selling kratom products where consumers have access to it. And then we have labeling to inform the consumers. Labeling is a critical issue. The American Kratom Association represents consumers. We do not represent manufacturers. There are 6,000 manufacturers in the United States today of kratom products. The vast majority of them are what they call small batch manufacturers. They are people, however well-intentioned, who purchase kratom raw materials from a farmer in Indonesia or somewhere in Southeast Asia. They get it shipped directly to them, and then they repackage it. They take the powder and they take it out of a big bag and they put it into a plastic bag. Maybe it's even pretty in terms of the labeling, and yet they've done nothing in terms of good manufacturing practices. They don't label the product. They don't know what a safe serving size is because they've not done a lick of science in order to determine that. But it's a cheap way to do it, right? And I get calls from these people all of the time saying, we're done with you in the American Kratom Association because you are trying to put us out of business. And I always say, yes, I am. Yes, you need to be put out of business because unless you're willing to invest in the equipment that's necessary to produce safe products without cross-contamination, unless you're willing to submit to testing by an independent laboratory, which costs money, to verify that your product is safe, unless you're willing to show that your packaging and your labeling is justified with good science, you should not be on the marketplace any more than the 7-OH people should be, right? 7-OH people step up their game. They have this attractive marketing to kids. They have pseudoscience. They just announced, by the way, a beagle study. Beagle animal studies, by the way, are good replications of humans. And so they contracted for a beagle study, and they started with the ascending dose, 10 milligrams, and they were going to go up to 40 milligrams. At the 10 milligrams, the 7-OH study failed because the beagles started experiencing serious problems, adverse events. And they started to have impairment neurologically, and they had drooling. So they stopped the study. Now, normally when that happens, you would go back to your institutional review board, you would examine exactly what occurred, and you would reformulate the study. They didn't do that. They immediately just stepped it down to a very small level of 7-OH and re-administered to the dogs. And then they had problems with the beagles too. Not as serious because they were 10 times lower on the dose. This is the kind of problem that we have with the 7-OH manufacturers that's driven by one thing: cash, money, revenue, profits. That's the problem we face here in this particular situation. So we think that the responsible thing to do is to step up and protect consumers. And we're reformulating our model Kratom Consumer Protection Act to do that, to address this emerging marketplace of synthetic products. And we think it's critically important that you age restrict these products. I think that's important, whether it's 18 or 21, we let the local jurisdictions decide on that issue. I know that there's lots of people that say that if we want our kids to go to war for us at 18, we should allow them to make a decision intelligently about that. We leave that to the local jurisdictions. Most of the KCPAs that have been passed in the United States go to the 21-year-old, but we can live with 18 if necessary. But the important factor is that we don't allow these sales, and they need to be verified when the purchase is made. I had a legislator in the state of Louisiana say that they had gone online and they had purchased a Kratom product. A sample would be provided to them for free, and they were able to do it without checking on age. We think that's wrong. And we think every manufacturer, if they're selling on the internet or they're selling at a store, should have age verification procedures. We're going to make sure that it is sold properly to an actual consumer population that's benefiting from it. So basically, it's a bottom line for us is one thing: consumer protection. We think that's the key to this, and every state legislature and regulator needs to understand how important this is. As I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lag time between the evaluation when the Drug Enforcement Administration announces the 7-OH ban. There's going to be a lag. And they're not going to include all the synthetics. The states can fill that breach. You can protect your consumers today by making sure at the earliest opportunity in your next legislative session you pass a Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which says you're not allowing synthetics. And we have the definition that, while technical, will block all of these synthetics from coming to market, and we'll share that with you in your individual states. We think that you also have to ban adulterants. Under the radar, there are unscrupulous kratom vendors or masquerading as kratom vendors that are spiking kratom with fentanyl, with heroin, and morphine. That's a fact. We have reported over 100 kratom manufacturers to the FDA over the last 3 years that are improperly formulating and mislabeling their products. We think that the states can play a critical and an important role in making sure that that doesn't continue, and we need your help. In order to provide that help, we have resources at theamericankratom.org. We will answer any call. We will be in your state to help in not only lobbying, but we'll also testify. The scientists, the credible scientists on kratom are wonderful people that believe in the proper formulation of plant products to protect the American consumer. We want to help you do that. We want to be partners with you in doing it. And as Representative Kennedy said, Speaker Pro Tem from Rhode Island, I can't tell you how magnificent it was to have a reversal of a ban that was initiated in 2016 by the FDA at the FDA's encouragement. And today, the FDA, when called to a courtroom, federal courtroom in South Carolina, to document with experts and with documents the safety profile of kratom, they responded to the judge and said, we, the FDA, have not yet determined whether kratom is dangerous or not. And they pointed to an FDA single ascending dose study that the FDA itself concluded that, as I described to you, went through up to 12 grams in a 5-minute period. The FDA today recognizes that kratom is safe for use when responsibly labeled and responsibly consumed. We hope you'll join us in this effort. We look forward to partnering with all of you in your states and welcome any questions you have. Thank you very much for being here.